According to Michael Warfel, Sam is like if a martini was riding a skateboard while reading a book. Quick survey. Maybe the best skater to come out of Buffalo, New York? No offense, Jake Donnelly. We would like to personally thank his wife, Dina, for managing their baby Ever and their cat, Rodney, to make absolutely no money for their family this weekend. From 2020 to 2023, he ran the blog Waxing the Curb, where he published monthly skate criticism, and most recently, he founded Plank, a totally new and unprecedented merger of skateboarding and art. If you'd like to buy an ad in Plank, please contact him after the panel. Sam Korman.
Thanks, Ryan. You had a chance to really roast me there, and you kept it tasteful. I really appreciate that.
There's still time.
Basically, it's just Peter and me, and we're going to talk about Peter's work and some of the kind of historical context that has informed and surrounded it. And we kind of wanted to start with a video that Peter made recently, and he'll have a couple things to say about that, and then I'll kind of give a little mini lecture, and then we'll just kind of go through the slideshow, and we'll get Peter to be his charming and wonderful self.
Thanks, everyone. This is awesome. This is the vibe. Sorry. I love that guy, that meme. Okay. This is, I just wanted to say I think this is an awesome event. I've learned a lot. This is our housemates screening their event the other night, their film the other night. And it just super thought-provoking and made me feel like I can do better. And it's fun to have all that link back to the skate community. And then to start, I made this logo for this little clip. It's leaked footage. It's not out yet. Even when it comes out, it's only going to go on my Instagram, so it's not a big deal, but I wanted to make a logo.
Cool. Yeah. We wanted to kind of use that as like the introduction to Peter's work, and I thought it was like really apt because in spite of this video, I have a big secret, which is that Peter is not a skate photographer normally. It's something he actually came to later, and I want to trace that trajectory while we sit up here as two dads in graphic hoodies and a hat. Okay, so here it goes. One of the cool things about this talk today is that it's a really kind of amazing culmination of a conversation that Peter and I have been having pretty much since last summer. We had a cool experience yesterday where we met for the first time, even though we've like been talking and working together for the last 8 months or something like that. And it was the first time I've ever had the experience of meeting someone in person and getting to say, wow, you're tall, which we said at the same time to one another. Because Peter's taller than me. But anyway, that conversation started when I asked Peter to contribute to Plank for our second issue, which we're working on now. And that initial invitation evolved into me writing a text for a recent exhibition of his that took place in Tokyo. And now it's become this kind of two-person journey through his career as an artist. And there's something really remarkable, I think, about that conversation, and it's something that's so natural, and I don't think I've really experienced something so organic with an artist for a really long time, so it's been really refreshing for me. And part of it I think is Peter, and part of it, is I think that there's this kind of wonderful element to his work that's both kind of gentle but also weird, and I think Peter's just this like incredible listener, and he has a really cool family too. Anyway, that's just kind of a personal note. I guess what I'm interested in doing with the talk today is to show you how Peter became a skate photographer, because it might surprise you, it's not always been his beat. For the last 25 years, he's been a professional photographer and an artist, but really skateboarding is a more recent phenomenon for him. The more defining condition to his work is that he belongs to a generation that has been dubbed post-internet, which, to put it simply, means a generation of artists who are responding to the unique conditions that mass electronic communication and global information exchange have brought about, both good and bad. So let's go back to the 2000s. With new consumer technologies like the new Macs that were being released at the time, which prioritized image editing and internet access, and expanding access to the internet more generally, the 2000s were marked by a growing thirst for images with a distinct presence and currency in a more shareable image economy. Blogs quickly competed with traditional media arbiters like newspapers and magazines and websites. Tim Barber's infamous tinyvices.com, for instance, captured much of the spirit of this online community. There was something dark, macabre, even a little pervy about its approach to the American landscape, yet also something distinctly ecstatic. Instead of grand narratives of American heroes, this period was more precarious, provisional, and niche. The cowboys gave way to subcultural icons like bike messengers, druggies, ravers, gorpcore people, graffiti writers, and also skaters, all seeping into the collective unconscious with their own codes of conduct and fashion. Many of these were subjects of Peter's work at that time. When I look back at the 2000s, I see the seeds of some of the darkness and mind-bending qualities of our present moment, but I'm also nostalgic for the great opening up that it represented. These were not people who were, frequently featured. If you follow an account like at Crisis Acting today, that's the kind of aesthetic we're talking about. And there's also a Tiny Vices retrospective show at the Hole that I believe closes this weekend in New York. But that happening right now, it reminds me of what was so important about that website. It fomented a community around a distinct ethos, and being internet first, it translated that community into massive, rangy, messy exhibitions. Back then, it was an avant-garde gesture to do that. A declaration that a new generation had arrived and that there was a new criterion for measuring a successful image, how well it performed online. Peter, however, is not solely a photographer. His work still responds to those post-internet conditions, but now he's exploring how to be an artist when everything you produce gets flattened into a JPEG and immediately redistributed online. A different kind of attention span, and indeed a completely different register of artworks, sprang up to embody this condition. His paintings anticipated their final redistribution through platforms like Instagram and, if you were online in 2013, Tumblr. Although the aesthetic was derogatorily dubbed zombie formalism by the late Walter Robinson, that label too easily dismisses works created in the darkly ecstatic flurry of immediate image sharing, along with the collective vibe flows and big data we now take for granted. This new aesthetic was all about surface, referencing canonical abstraction. Think Amy Knobel's minimalist-shaped canvases, Blinky Palermo's scrapwood sculptures, or Sigmar Polka's deconstruction of images and the media apparatus in post-war Germany. Echoes of these canonical paintings gave Peter's work a clear ethos and anchored it to a distinct canon, even as the ever-increasing speed of image sharing further decontextualized it. Yet these works also embraced, to some extent, their dematerialized existence. They looked beautiful in the white cube of your phone, and there was a serendipity in the way images came together to hint at narratives that never fully come into focus, partly because they never have the time or attention to resolve in the eyes of the viewer, and partly because doing so would demand more time and focus from the artist than the high costs of studios or the shell game that is the art market allow. Put another way, such art historical gesturing provided an armature onto which Peter could pin references to graffiti and an iconography drawn from the Mountain West. To give you a better picture, these canvases were collaged together, juxtaposing a bedraggled black line alongside a mushroom with a ladybug on it. and maybe even a Black Label logo thrown in for good measure. As I've been thinking about this talk and hanging out with Peter and Maya and Nima, I've also been thinking about an artwork by Ben Kinmott. It's also been a touchstone for me since my daughter Ever was born last year. The artwork is from 1998 and consists of a public statement on his website. It reads, sometimes a nicer sculpture is to be able to provide a living for your family. I have started an antiquarian book-selling business to help support my family. The artwork is not the business itself, but the contribution to our cost of living. Because the business specializes in books about food and wine before 1840, it also provides a broader context into which we see domestic activity as meaningful. So far, it's been successful. You can actually go to Ben's store in Sebastopol, California. I also love that he lists this as in the collection of the artist, which is a very funny, nerdy thing to do. Being an artist comes with a lot of ups and downs, and it's almost unbelievable that following your passion can actually lead somewhere, like both physically and in terms of your career and in terms of relationships. Yet there are countless other conditions you must create for yourself and your family to make it all work. And then there's the problem that, as an artist, it can be really, really easy to cannibalize your entire life until you're not sure what's yours anymore. It's perhaps for these reasons that I often think the true project of an artist isn't merely about producing new images, objects, or ideas. It's about figuring out how to make a living within current conditions and tools, and, by some miracle, how to also open up a space and time to make work. Basically, to figure out different models for living. It's a really strange notion because even after leaving New York for Colorado to prioritize family life and spend more time with his son, Peter is still pulling it off, despite being away from the traditional epicenter of where art careers typically flourish. I often look to Peter and Maya as really kind of symbols of hope in my own life in New York, where I'm like, they're doing it, they're figuring it out. This is really cool. As I wrote it here, a family that snowboards together sticks together. Perhaps it's fitting then that Peter has returned to skateboarding. After other aspirations have changed and changed direction, and now as a father in need of a more integrated creative practice, he comes to skate culture. It presents the possibility to create something immediate, something that didn't require the same kind of narrative arc to be done and completed in one day. And it can also be done at the skate park where maybe he's skating with his son. Maybe his turn towards skateboarding also reflects his embrace of youth and adolescence and reconsidering that, capturing that clumsy spirituality inherent in skate culture. On some days, a single trick might only inspire one photo, if that, if anyone gets any clips, if anyone shows up. But on other days, just an hour out can yield 5 bangers. Production moves in glorious bursts and periods of boredom and pointlessness. Perhaps more importantly, even though we're still stuck on the same aging social media platforms, there's a real need to go where the skaters are, to the spots, to the people. There's a certain physicality to it. And there's also the importance of kind of making them feel at ease and discovering yourself as you kind of relate to these new subjects. It has even opened up a completely novel way of image making for Peter, a sort of you looking at me, looking at you, looking at me kind of approach. As you saw in the video, you don't just sense Peter's eye, you now see Peter literally in the image, filming himself as he takes a photo with the video capturing the broader moment, the broader context that brings that image about. It's kind of about negative space in a really deep philosophical way, but also in a chill, let's hang out kind of way. It's like he's managed to slip some of that weird stillness back into the frenetic, dissonant flow of images online. It's also a fitting metaphor for his approach. Instead of simply blending into the background through his choice of subjects or immersive style, he now fully involves himself in the creative process, setting up the very conditions for his art as he makes it. There's like a common metaphor of, building the airplane while we're flying it, or it harkens back to one of my favorite artworks that has one of the best titles of all time, Robert Morris's Box with the Sound of Its Own Making. Peter once told me he never set out to be a photographer. He just needed something to keep busy after his dad passed away. In fact, many of his books are dedicated to his parents. He also told me, with a look of concern on his face, that he had a really normal childhood. He seemed really worried that everyone would find out that he wasn't raised in the circus, or that there wasn't some traumatic origin story. But I don't think that's always what makes a great artist, that there are other ideas that are quite complex and other narratives that we can dig into. Honestly, I think one of the most important things, both for art and skateboarding, is that boredom can be its own driver, and whether it's a camera or a skateboard or, say, publishing a new magazine, you latch onto the first thing that gives you permission to get out the door and locate yourself in the landscape. This approach reminds me of one of my favorite quotes by the Fluxus artist Robert Filliou, whose entire project was about breaking down the barriers between art and life, much like skating, which occupies that same in-between space. Filliou once said, "Art is what makes life more interesting than art." And I truly believe that's the case, especially for Peter. Art isn't just a job, and it's not always about making art. It's about how you live the world and letting that be as weird as possible. Okay, so kind of handing it over to Peter.
Thanks, Sam. That was awesome. I'm super touched. Okay, I'll just jump right into this. This is my first time using a clicker, so we'll see how we do. Okay, the year was 1998. I moved to Manhattan, and I really didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't move there with any specific goals or anything, and I worked at a place called Angelica Kitchen. It's kind of a cult-following, famous vegan restaurant that a lot of people would come through. And I just found it really inspiring, just being there, being in the buzz. I worked in the juice bar. Other kids had been there before myself that were from Colorado, and I think they put in the word for me to get the job, so it was cool. This has a point. This is the tip jar at Angelica Kitchen. This was actually a portal, I learned, to get the money to buy one of these. And I bought it with cash from working at Angelica Kitchen. And this would get me into photography and filmmaking. And I didn't realize what it could do, because it would let me into all these other worlds, like other people's lives. And it was exciting. So this is the first like real project I made. It's like a bike messenger film. I have a little clip from it. A lot of people, I don't know, somehow it's still around, which is awesome. This is shot in '99 on that camera.
I think they got the boy they got there with the family. They don't get enough of me on TV, man. Oh, again? Hey, look at that. This guy, you see this guy on TV? Nah, he got it. So what's up? Now you got the famous Kid Ill on tape. I am the best in New York, I know that. Let me tell you something about being the best in New York. It's not about being as fast. Yeah, I am fast and all that, but it's not about being fast. It's about having sense of direction and where you're going. If you know where you're going and you know how to get there, that's the most important thing. You ain't got to be fast. Because if you was fast, for that you go to the Tour de France and earn some big money. You right? What can you say? 74. Come in, 74. Can you pick that phone up and call me, please? Not only am I the best messenger, I'm the best dispatcher in the world. See that right there, B? I know all that right there, all that. Technically, the cops do own the streets, but in reality, we own the streets. The troopers out here, the messengers out here, we own the streets. I'm flying down 6th Avenue with these two cops on bicycles. You know, they got them little bullshit Fuji bikes with the knobby wheels, all fat and all that. I'm flowing, you know. I got light-speed titanium frame, you know what I'm saying, white industry hubs, and, you know, my bike is like maybe 21 pounds, flying. So I stopped at a light, and they pull up on me and said, yo, pull over. I said, for what? They said, you ate like 6 lights. I was like, all right, where you want me to pull over? So when they looked to tell me where to pull over, I just jetted. So they started chasing me. So I'm like this, just riding. And I would look back and I see them, they going like this, right? They're trying to catch up to me. And I'm just riding hard, looking at them. And I would ride to every corner and stop and wait till they catch up. I'll wait till they like about 2 car lengths, then I'll take off again and make them keep doing it for a couple of blocks. And then when I'm far away, the fat cop is already, he done gave up. All the cookies and pork chops fell out of his pockets. And the other cop, he's like sort of determined to try to, you know what I mean? But, I'll be making fun of them at the corner like, you ain't gonna catch me, you're not gonna catch me.
Cool. So the reason I put this in is because I actually, like I said, I didn't know what I was going to do, and I bought that camera, and I was going to try to film skateboarding, and I did for a little while, and I got some clips, but people talked about the lack of income in some of these things. This was at a time when if you got a clip in 411, I think it was $15, and a line was 20 or $25. So it was, it just, I didn't see how it could pan out, but I did use the techniques of filming skateboarding to make that movie, which was really cool. And then that clip kind of illustrates like some of this stuff that goes across all these subcultures where it's like us against the cops in a playful way, like all those things. So the bike messenger thing was the first thing I really was looking at when I moved to New York as kind of like an exotic thing that I wanted to check out. So that was lucky.
Where did you like screen that early version, and like how are you getting that out in the world?
I made the movie, and then I submitted it to film festivals, and it didn't get into any film festivals. It didn't get into the Sarasota local, like nothing. And then it got into South by Southwest at the end of like a year. So I thought it was going to be just dry, and then that happened, and then it got on Sundance Channel. So it had a good run. Again, it wasn't like super lucrative or anything, but I've just been happy that people sometimes, they tell me they've seen it and stuff. So it's in some ways too, it's like the last of like old New York in a way. There's like this, like, it's kind of pre-internet. It's like 99. And it's a time when like the messengers had like a real, community. Like I think it's gotten like broken down a bit because of like DoorDash or whatever it is. Did I answer it? Yeah. And then it was funny because the same thing, like I said, the camera like really got me places. So I had actually forgotten. The panel yesterday was talking about Stoked. I shot like half of that movie. I mean, my friend Helen here actually directed it, and she had been working on it for years before I came. But then the part that we shot, a lot of it went into the movie because it was like interviews with Caballero, Vallely, like all these people. So I just put that in because I was like, oh yeah, that was a thing. I mean, and that is just like, it's a heavy project, It's like, got a lot of layers. I don't know, I just wanted to, it's a throwback. Okay, so imagine these guys are 12 right here. This is me when I'm 12. I grew up in the same area as Akko and Atiba, and I knew them from 7th grade on, and I always saw, like Atiba was starting to shoot photos from maybe like 9th or 10th grade. So it seemed like this really hard kind of mystical thing to figure out, and I actually felt like I was like too late on it when I had moved to New York. But my brother actually gave me a camera, and I figured out like just basic f-stop, shutter speed, ISO, and then from there it's kind of on. And now I don't even know if you need to know those parts, but if I could, I understood that stuff, and I was like, okay, I want to make some images. And the documentary film stuff was so much work, because you're like a one-person band, and you have to edit it, and you have to get sound, and sometimes you have to light and everything by yourself. So for me, the photography felt just like a breeze. Like you just have a camera, something's happening, you can like take a picture. This was the first image that I wanted to capture. It's a swarm of gnats. So when I was a kid, I would lay in my yard and just there'd be these gnats buzzing around. I was like, this would translate in an interesting way in a photo. And this is sort of the beginning of my journey taking pictures. And I think I just got the roll back, and I was like, oh, this is cool. Like, maybe I can do this. So yeah. And then this is the exhibition that Sam mentioned. It's closing this weekend, probably today. But this was like a portal, like an online community, and it was like, for me, it felt like the first time anyone was curating like imagery that was put up online. It was called Tiny Vices, and I just emailed a bunch of photos to these guys, Tim Barber, and it was on. I mean, there's the Nat photo there. So he still has the print of that. So, go ahead.
Can you talk a little bit more about like the Tiny Vices universe, and also some things we were talking about yesterday about like kind of being able to post things online, what that opened up for you?
Yeah, so when I arrived in New York, print magazines had a lot of power and influence, and everyone wanted, anyone who was a photographer would hope to shoot for any kind of XYZ relevant magazine, Paper, Vice, Index. There were a bunch of cool magazines. And I would like wait and just be at the newsstand and be like, let me see these things. So it's transitioning though into digital, and this guy, Tim, was the photo editor at Vice, and then he was like, I'm gonna make this online project called Tiny Vices. He named it that so that he would reference like how he was able to meet all these people, because he was meeting them at Vice, because he's a photo editor, and then he's like, I'm uploading them on this name, Tiny Vices. And a lot of people happened to be in New York. And this is the same time as like Patrick O'Dell, Epically Later, blog, and like all these things that were, I thought, really exciting. Like I would get out of my bed in the morning and just sit at my computer and just start doing that. And yeah, and then the thing that Tim did was it actually, then there were people from other countries, and like people that had, there's this guy Boogie that shot all this stuff in Serbia, and it just became this like, I think like a global photo community. Like I have friends that I met from that, and that's probably like 2005, I would say. So that thing's rocking, and then Tumblr starts rocking, and there's no more need for like to find a niche art book to look at photography. And it also changes the way everyone's shooting. Let me see what I got. These are the types of photos that I submitted, and this is what kind of got my photography going a little bit. My granddad's actually buried in this plot, in this graveyard. So a lot of stuff has like a personal twang to it. I don't know how to describe these, but this is just like a kind of a vulnerable, cool image I shot. This is my brother just balancing a pocket knife. This is like a found in a pasture kind of artwork. This is like this guy in Utah just puts his hose going up the tree and turns it on, and then it's like January, it makes a sculpture. It's so cool. This was in Alaska, like just weather-tempered, weather-protected vehicles. So you can imagine all these going up on this Tiny Vices website. This was, I asked Axl Rose for a photo, saw him in New York. I never do that, but I just put it in because I was like, whew, all right, here we go. can I get your picture? I'm a fan. And he just stood there like that. So, go ahead.
A lot of that stuff feels like you're like leaving the city and kind of going out and being like, oh, check out the weird stuff from my hometown, or like, check out this stuff from the, mountain time region. And like, what was getting you to like leave the city, or why did you want to kind of return to that landscape in particular?
I think I wanted to make art, and I saw that where I had grown up, which is Colorado Springs and Manitou, had what I thought was art, because it had this kind of leftover 60s like psychedelic aesthetic, swirly colors and like painted on rocks and stuff. And that was also part of how I grew up, looking at that stuff. So I thought maybe it just felt like this is what I want to capture. And then there were other artists I was looking at, Richard Prince. Even like something like Bob Dylan. Like when you listen to his music, you're like, he made up all these situations that he was in, and that became his art. And I was like, I'm just going to put myself in other situations to try to capture something unique. So a lot of these are like road trip type images. Let's see. Just, this is my grandmother's finger. I mean, so some of it is, traveling, and then some of it's like personal. And there's some like fringy stuff, youth culture stuff. Okay, this photo, this is my wife, Maya. She's here. We met, so I'm into photography too, and art, because it's like this thing where you put this energy into it and you put it out in the world, and you never know what's going to come back. This photo was in, I love this kind of intersection of like, nature and civilization, let's say. I don't know. But this deer just appears to be drinking out of this stream, but it just happens to be like a storm gutter. So I just remember driving by and shooting that, and then
You have a whole book about deer.
I did do a whole book about deer. 2006, there's a book called Buckshots, and it's all photos like that. I don't know how well it holds up, but for now, but it made sense to me at the time. And this photo was like the cover of this Korean art magazine called IANN, I-A-N-N, and Maya happened to see it, and she got in touch on Facebook, and a lot of other things. Now we have a child. She's here. It's awesome.
Wait, what was the first meeting? So it started.
Oh.
It started with a Facebook message?
Started with a Facebook message from Maya. She was living in Nepal. She invited me there to do a photography workshop for kids, which we did, which was a lovely experience. Nepal has a lot of programs, and we did like I think a 4-day photography workshop at a boys' home, basically for kids that were like going through rehabilitation from like sniffing glue on the street, stuff like that, like street kids. So it was heavy, but it was just neat to see them so open to what I was showing them, because we did a fashion day where I just like tore out a bunch of magazine photos. We put them on the wall. We did portraiture. We did a action sports day. I showed them snowboard videos. It was awesome. So Maya and I linked through that.
And then you came back to New York and you're like, I'm in love with someone in Nepal.
Pretty much.
Wow.
And then
I often think about I don't know if you ever encountered this book. It was published by this press called Paper Monument. And they used to publish these books that were about essentially advice on navigating the art world. And they had one that's it was interviews with different professional artists and curators and gallerists and art industry people. And they had one that was should you move to New York City or should you get an MFA? And asking that question. And then they also had one that was just about etiquette, basically, but I don't know who it was, but I think about this a lot, and it was someone who had moved to New York to become an artist, and it was like back when you still had slides that you had to take around to galleries to get noticed and stuff, if that ever worked, I don't know. But anyway, this person like goes into some gallery, and they have all their portfolio with them, and they're like, "Hi, I'm a new person in town. Can you show my artwork?" And the owner was like, "No, but like if you want a part-time job, like you can work here." And the person worked out, and they like worked there. They went full-time. They eventually became like a gallery director and like a co-owner of the gallery and everything. And they were like, "So I never really got like the art career I thought I was gonna have, but like, you know, that's how I met my wife, and now we have kids, and so like I wound up having a really good life, just like pointing myself in the direction of the art world, but like it wasn't the outcome I expected." And I kind of love these, I don't know, I love these moments of like, oh yeah, like you were taking photos, and like you took a photo of a deer, and that photo of a deer caught the eye of someone in Korea, and they put it on the cover of the magazine, and then somehow that magazine made it to Maya in Nepal, and she's like, "Cool deer." Maybe this guy seems cool. Let's get him out here. And then turns out, fast forward, you are cool, and hit it off, and then like you're both artists together, and I just think like those types of things always frame out the photos or those narratives for me when I'm looking at these. Obviously, I like know both of you, but I think, I don't know, those are always like important details to include, because.
Yeah, it was like kind of a lesson of like, should I do this thing? And it's just usually it's just like, go do it, you know. And I actually went to Nepal with no romantic intentions, because I saw her picture on Facebook, and I was like, she's probably like married or something, you know. She looks pretty cool. So that was a lucky deal that came from shooting photos of deer. And then this image I put in because it's funny, because at this point then I'm like getting back into books, right? I'm like, oh, with a book you can put two images next to each other and it creates a whole nother thing. So this is like cloud painting instructional video. This is like a thrift store tape, and this is just like a snap from a snowboard trip. So I put them together because it just illustrates that thing of like, oh, books and zines is like a whole nother lane, and then art form, and I love that stuff.
What were books allowing you to do that like kind of maybe existing online, or maybe some of like the more commercial editorial work you were doing at the same time you couldn't do there?
Right. I looked at. I think I saw a book by Ari Markopoulos called Transitions and Exits, and it's like it's about snowboarders, but it's like an artistic take on it, and it's these like non-precious, just so many shots. But then when you look at it the way it's sequenced, it kind of feels like a film, or like you're on a trip with them or something. And then it is like the internet's going, and you're trying to figure out what's going on with it, and no one knows if this is like a legit way to like archive something or any of those. So it kind of goes back to books in a way. And I think to like trace down the line from the Tiny Vices thing I'd mentioned, that this whole thing took off, the New York Art Book Fair, LA Art Book Fair. So I feel like indie publishing just went big. And I never saw that coming, because I thought books were gonna like just go out after that, you know? But that's fun to me, that putting these two next to each other. This is just like a recent photo of like at a skate house that I took. I only put this in to just show that I'm just still doing it, because I just keep going, and this is what I like. And sometimes you get like a cool image like that. Let's see. Okay, this is again like talking about internet and digital. So when Instagram was first going, this is 2012, I was in Miami and this guy like rolled up and I could hear his dreads like tapping on the door because it was like he was driving and then I like flagged him down. And I was like, let me get a picture. So I took the digital one, put it on Instagram, and also took a film one. And I'm just putting that in because this is starting to like spin the wheels of like what's relevant as a still image. You know, where are we going with this stuff?
So when Instagram hits, which is kind of like a hard thing to imagine, like it's so ubiquitous now, there's, you know, it's even more gamified than it ever was, and more addictive than it ever was. But so it's really hard to imagine a world that where this is like new and moves slowly and doesn't have video and like only has a few people on it still. But at the same time, I feel like it also really staged a major crisis for a lot of people, or a lot of people were like, oh no, like photography is dead because of Instagram. And or even like skateboarding, it was like suddenly, you know, there was that immediacy. You could share out your photos, you could share out your videos immediately, and it really like completely reorganized the industry. So I'm wondering if it ever felt like a crisis to you, or if it felt differently.
It never felt like a crisis. I thought it was more about it being an exciting thing because I had said this to you the other day, like when I first started taking pictures, like there's a Wolfgang Tillman's taking a picture of a stovetop was kind of like, that was an artistic gesture. And then things like that kind of got filtered out because everyone's seen it, it's easy, you know, and then it really makes you like redefine like what's gonna hold, what makes sense. And the picture for me becomes kind of this like everything and nothing. It's like the most scrollable, quickly digested thing, but it's also the quickest way to like catch a feeling, or an energy or anything like that. So I kind of embraced the Instagram thing as like maybe this is the moment, you know, that we're going through. And then it was interesting in the beginning to see like because it was almost like the rules were like, you had your phone, you take the picture, you put it up. So like I have a picture of my wife with like Lee Scratch Perry in Whole Foods, and I threw it up. People are like stoked, you know? and then slowly it evolved, and now we know where it's like carousels and carefully chosen stuff. But you know, I didn't realize this is 2012, so it's already been like quite a while. This photo I put in because I love this picture, but I wished I had shot it on film. So that's like for me where the phone thing falls short, and sometimes it's better to not do that. Let's see. This is, these are photographs of like a specific project I did. So, you know, like there's a guy in the Bike Messenger movie that's like a prominent graffiti guy. And he was my roommate and showed me a lot of stuff about graffiti, and I was like really into it. He wrote Pez, P-E-Z, and he's like he was a San Francisco guy, then New York. Now he's back in California, but he was really respected and well known. And I was like, I want to do this project where I take a picture of graffiti writers, and then y'all can put your tag on it. So these were like 11 by 14 prints that I shot. And the fun thing about these was like figuring out composition of where the tag might go, the varying ways the subjects would want it to like obscure their identities due to the like illegalness of graffiti. You know, this one, he's like far back, so there's like tons of room to sign it. The silhouette.
Can you talk a little bit about like kind of the importance of going out and actually like tracking down those graffiti writers, and like because it seems like, going to New York is a lot about like wanting to be where the action is, or, and like kind of forming those relationships with some of your subjects. Because I remember you were also saying like this was some of the first time you were experimenting with portraiture. So what did it mean to kind of like go track these writers down and then also befriend them, or was it even befriending them? Like,
oh yeah. So skaters are a squirrely bunch, obviously, and then graffiti people are even more so. So this is like a 3.5 year project. This is like done with pagers. This is before cell phones. So somehow this happened where I linked with all these folks twice. This was exciting because these guys think about being in an image maybe the same way a skater could, where they're like, okay, what color am I wearing? What's the background? And these guys have the natural kind of swagger where it's like the North Face with the build. So it felt like, in doing this book, I'm new. I'm learning how to take photos of people, because before that it was the stuff I showed you where it's like the dagger on the hand and all that. And this felt like more collaborative. Like I felt like a little bit of fashion element to it. I felt like it was a peak time for graffiti. And I would watch other photographers, and like some people are really good. Like if I have the camera or you have the camera and we each take a portrait of Sam, it's going to be different. Like that energy that I give you will bounce back, and the imagery that someone else, it'll always look different, even with the same camera, same background. So that thing was fascinating to me, where I'm like, the really good people, they have like a finesse to these photos where they're able to shoot people in a way where they look relaxed, or they're like stoked on it, whatever it is. That was what I was trying to get with these, and also just figure out how to use the camera. I mean, this is like, I actually lugged a tripod to do this, which I haven't done in a while. I should be doing it more, but.
I also love that they're kind of a record of like logistics and phone logs, and that like you have to track them down more than once, and yet still like trying to produce something that has a kind of immediacy to it and an immediate sense of recognition, even though it was about like lots of phone calls, lots of meetings, lots of pre-planning the images, lots of like conversations before they even really like happen at all.
Yeah, and I would say it was well, some of them didn't work out because some of the writers would have an idea where like I'm coming at them on a train and they're on the other train, and I gotta like things like that that didn't work. And there's things I would do differently with this work, but this was the first like big kind of project that was published and taken seriously, and I'm still friends with a lot of these guys. It was a cool zone. And then the whole time I'm still shooting kind of like street stuff and like, crunchy stuff that I showed you earlier. And then I shot this photo with Gons just spontaneously, like, and he's interesting. The funny thing about him is, for me, he'll give me the same greeting if I saw him like yesterday or like 3 years ago. He's like, "What's up, Sutherland?" And it's like, it doesn't matter how much time has passed, it's the same greeting. I love that. But we did this photo just spontaneously. I had a camera, he was riding his bike around the neighborhood. And I was like, oh, this is sick. Like, I kind of want to try to shoot, movement stuff here and there.
Was that published in the journal?
I think this was published. No, this was in Lilypad later. I don't think it was published anywhere, like originally. But again, I love the way all these things kind of link up. Where like he's into bikes and skateboard, and he's got the cigar. I don't know. It's just cool. And then that led me to. I was out and I saw Jason Dill, and he was like down to get a photo, and I was like, okay, I got to show the takeoff and landing, right? And he was like, yeah. Because that's what I mean. I'm so green. Like sometimes it's literal, but I don't get it till like someone says it. And I had this camera, and this is the photo. So for me to shoot this with that camera, I have to press down halfway and focus on the trash can, and then, wait for him to go. This was shot for Monster Children magazine. The really cool thing about this was like he waited for that taxi to come. Like he wanted it to be like a New York banger, and somehow it just came out like I love it. And then, again, going back to the, meeting Maya from photos, like he walked around and talked about this photo to people, and he's persuasive, and I can't really do a good impersonation, but you guys know. It looks like a 90s photo. Like that. So from that, I started to shoot for Supreme from 2011, just from shooting that and him telling them to hire me.
Can you talk a little bit about the experience of shooting for Supreme? Because I think there were two details in our conversation yesterday I found really interesting. Like, one was kind of this moment in which they're kind of transitioning skateboarders, or they're young skateboarders, into a kind of more model role. And then also kind of being like older and shooting with younger people and kind of having a different perspective. Like, I was thinking about it last night as I was like working on the talk and thinking about how, so much of skate culture is like you and your friends getting out and showing what you're about. And it's like there's an immediacy to that. And but being like the older guy looking back on it, you're like, oh, this is more about youth. This is more reflective. This is more, so I'm curious like what that experience was like.
So I didn't pull enough of these kind of images, but we were shooting for Popeye magazine for Japan usually. In the beginning, we would just find someone that we would think could do it and like be in the photos and make them pop and all that. I shot Ted Barrow. I don't know if he's here, but he modeled this guy Nugget that did graphics.
Wait, why didn't you put the TED photo in?
I should have. There's a bunch of them. I don't know how many are like still online, but like the guy Nugget does graphics for Palace, he modeled. So in the beginning, it was kind of like finding a location and a model. And then this wave when like Tyshawn, Sage, Sean Pablo, they all come in and they're like, yeah, like you said, like kids. And I don't know, in some ways it just felt pretty organic because they could just do it. I told him this, but like with Tyshawn, I was like, he said he was like, this, maybe younger than this. He was like a kid. He was like, I'm going to get a Maybach one day. And then I go, and then I'm like, then you need to work on your flip in, flip out shit. And I don't even skate really. So I'm like, I just wanted to say something funny. And then later he was like 15 years later, he was like, you said I couldn't do it. And I was like, no, dude, I was just roasting. I knew you could do it. So there is like I feel like they were figuring it out. Everyone was kind of figuring it out because that thing of like the skaters are like also going to model. I mean, I didn't think of it at the time. We would just go shoot it, and it was pretty fun because it did still have like a looseness to it that like a skate mission might have. I don't know if that answers it, but yeah. This is like a harsh turn, but basically like at some point in there, I started to get frustrated with like kind of the limitations of photography and like the print size and the cropping and chrome, white or black frame, that kind of stuff. I mean, I love all that stuff, but I wanted to like put my own spin on it. I figured out that you need a studio if you're going to do that. You need to like be able to let let the work marinate. It can't just be on the computer and like in a folder. So these are images where this is like a 4x6 or 4x8, OSB. It's like chipboard. And then the images I would print on window decals, like you see it like Subway sandwiches. And kind of glue them down so they're filled with holes so they would like mesh onto the wood. And this was the first thing that ever kind of worked for me in like the art world. So this was like the only work that was like worth money to other people. Because anyone that's a photographer is like tried to sell prints, it's really hard. And it's expensive because you got to frame it, and then that frame messes with the cost.
Can you talk about that kind of very weird relationship that the art world has to photography, and how like even still it's not always considered like at the same level as like painting or sculpture or these other forms?
Yeah, so the art world, if you like global art world, like New York and LA, Europe, like wherever it is, I guess now like it's a big thing, but the slice that's actually left for photography is really small. So there's only a few people I've seen that have really cracked the art world and been able to run with it in terms of like, there's like Wolfgang Tillmans, some photographers that are like more or less, they've done historic work that can't come back, that can have value. Eggleston, Walker Evans, like things like people like that. But for the most part, it's like a really skinny lane, because I feel like it's like painting is like most of it, and then sculpture, photography are pretty skinny, and then video work is like really hard. You're a magician if you can sell someone a video. People do it, but I think it's tricky. So for me, this was a fun way to like present photography where it's still like I had intervened with it in an analog way, and it still looked like a series, and people liked them. So this is like 2014. So I'm kind of going chronologically through everything. Let's see.
I think it's important to note too that like kind of making a leap from one medium to another, like from the outside, it doesn't seem that weird, it's like, oh, okay, you wanted to try something else. But especially if you have like a name for yourself that's kind of been built up over the preceding 10 or 15 years, and everyone knows you as a photographer, and everyone's seen your photos, and everyone also thinks of you kind of in a more photo lane, which kind of veers more toward like magazine and editorial usually. It can be really challenging to be taken seriously as an artist, because they're like, oh, you don't think like us, you don't live like us, you have a job or something, like, whereas there's kind of this still lingering idea of like a suffering, struggling artist, and like you're not really like allowed to have a day job, or you're not really allowed to talk about it, or it's not something you're even allowed to like foreground in your work. And I think that like for photographers who want to make a leap into the, for lack of a better way to say it, like fine art realm, like I think that brings up a lot of those issues, even though the art market is an incredibly commercialized place and is like run exclusively like a business these days. Like there's still some kind of weird mythology that like anyone who wants to do that kind of bumps up against. So being able to kind of cross that threshold, and like with image or creating, images that can kind of cross that threshold, I think is no small feat, really. So just wanted to bring that up and point that out about this work.
Oh yeah, for the art world, and again, I'm not trying to sound cynical, but if you do have a job, it has to be teaching or DJing. Otherwise, or something kind of like a grocery store, like it can't be certain things. And then if you do make money from like a fashion company, it has to be like something super chic. It can't be, I what's a mid gap? You know, so much. And then, I mean, that's a generalization, but there are rules. And then, for me, like getting my toe in the art world like this was fun, and it kind of made me like feel relaxed about the rules after that. Because I was just like, oh, whatever, it's fine. Let's see. This is more of the same work. This was at a museum, CAM St. Louis. Pretty fun to like get to work that big. And then, so this was 2015, and then, you know, I'm thinking about it, and I am trying to play by the rules and all that, and then I have some success with this stuff, and then I think that it's on, and I'm like, I'm headed for the stars, you know? And then nothing sold after that. So like 2015, like none of these pieces sold, and they actually resold in auctions for like really cheap. So I was like, all right.
Which basically can doom your career as an
It
artist.
can doom your career, but I was like, I'm not going to look at it that way. I'm going to look at it as like, all right, all bets are off. I'm just going to do the things that I think are fun. And this was like, these are graphics I did for GX, and this for me was like a lot of artists might not want to do graphics, but I thought it was like, I'm not going to say giving back to the skateboarding, but it was a way for me to like engage in it in the same way that I first felt inspiration from it. So I saw the first wave of Pal Peralta, Madrid, Vision, like all those boards when I was a little kid, and they sunk in really deep just from like, you know, the graphics and the wheels and doing 2 different color wheels and all that stuff. So I was like, this is actually a really cool way for like a young person to see physical artwork is on a board wall. So I was stoked about this.
Can you talk a little bit about like your relationship to an audience? Like, is there you know, when you're making photos or when you're making paintings or when you're doing skate graphics, like, is there an audience you envision yourself speaking to?
It's not so much that I think about like audience. I think I kind of have to think about what's relevant for myself. So like with these images, wrong way. With these images, it was like, this is 2015, so this is like, okay, one gesture, but it pops, you know, like one thing. And then more years go by and we're seeing more stuff all the time. Now we're on this like everything is everything kind of vibe where we just see everything. So as we get closer to that, I want it to be impressive. Like I want it to look like I spent time with it. I want it to feel more like hand done, more like I labored on it. Like, and that's the same with like clothing, you know. For a while, I loved like simplicity kind of graphics or no graphics, and then that goes through, and we have like this surge of graphics, and now I want things that look like they're just one-off, handmade. And that's the same with these boards. Like I want each one to just look like I honed in for a long time. And that doesn't come from within. It comes from like I'm looking at other artists. So like there's like all these artists in LA right now, Mario Ayala, and like his crew is kind of like one painting might have taken 3 months. And I'm looking at that, I'm like, that's sick. That's better than the quickie thing, you know? Does that make sense? Okay. These were graphics. I love snowboarding too.
Are you sure you want to admit that to this crowd?
I know some people are too skate to ever want to touch a snowboard. I totally respect that. That's been a thing for a long time. I love the powder days. And then I met people from K2. they were really cool. We got along, and then they were like, "Do you want to do some graphics?" And then again, I mean, I put these in because it kind of comes back to the personal note of, at the time I got that offer, my son was 3, I think, and we were playing with Play-Doh every day. And I probably just looked at it and I was like, "Here's my graphics." So I made these and just photographed them. And then the base of the board is just Play-Doh laid down with the food rolling pin to smush it out and give it that that psychedelic kind of color.
How do things change once Nima arrives in terms of like art making? I think you have some good stories about how you had to kind of rethink your practice a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, so Nima was born in 2017, buddy. I know when you were born. And basically, like, we had the child, and then I remembered I'd seen these in an exhibition in a vitrine. I saw these pieces by Matthew Barney, and they were like these little books with like stickers on them, and he had like whittled at them, and I was like, I bet these are from when he had a kid with Bjork. Because suddenly you kind of need to be closer to the family, and you can't be off like dunking cars in the river like he does, like things like that. It kind of everything gets smaller. So that's probably a result of that. And working on just works on paper, small stuff, because you don't want to be gone till 3 a.m. in the studio, like trying to figure it out. You just want to like work small, set it aside, and just don't miss it when your kid's growing up. So,
yeah, there's like the famous example of one of the Chicago imagists, Gladys Nilsson. Like, she just completely went to watercolors when her kids were born because she didn't want to use any toxic materials anymore. Like, and she knew the kids would be in the studio all the time, and she was like, I don't want to risk it in any way. So she just became like a watercolorist for the rest of her career, and is what she's known for now.
I'm with that. I remember shortly after my son was born, like taking a picture of a flower and just being like, we've come a long way from the burning dumpster photos. Like it does change it, and it's more watercolor. And then this is like a more recent one.
Oh, also, Nima wanted me to ask you if you had ever eaten a bagel. I'm not sure if he meant today or ever, but
I ate an entire bagel today. Bagel felt so good.
Way better than New York bagels.
Way better
honestly.
than New York. You guys, yeah. And how about you? How has being a dad shifted your vibe?
I think I just have
When it comes to work.
I mean, writing requires so much like dedicated focus that finding the time to do that is really challenging, obviously, and usually involves me sneaking time at work to the detriment of my relationship with my employer, or staying up really late and not getting any sleep. But I think like on a more practical level, I just have to trust myself a lot more than I ever did before, and I think I would hem and haw over over kind of more trivial details and trust like my knowledge about things and ability to kind of work out an idea a lot more. So I've partly because I think I'm also a lot less, precious about things, and I'm like, oh man, I should like labor over this for a really long time, and there's this kind of like self-imposed idea that like it needs to be worked on for some extended period, and I'm like, actually, like if I just commit, like I could do it in half an hour and like just trust that that's true, even though it feels a little bit like ripping the Band-Aid off every time I have to like send that off to something or send it. It feels like ripping off a Band-Aid every time I have to send it off to Max, and Max really digs in deep and holds me accountable for my wacky late night ideas. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's kind of the main, at least in terms of my own writing practice. Yeah.
And that's where we got the title sensitive realities for this panel, right? Kind of?
Yeah, more
Because
or
we were
less.
both like feeling the same. His kid's younger, but we're in the zone. This was a newer board that's released this year. I think Ryan's gonna raffle it off or something. There's one over there, which is cool. Let's see. This is all of you last night at Cowtown. I wanted to like break the chronology a little bit. This was awesome, the whole thing. And I love the, you can't, that skate shop is so good. It's like got the, it's like old school, like roller rink with like the lighting and the, I don't know. It's sick. If the owner is here, kudos. This is my son looking at the Jackass tape. So I put this in because this part of photography that's exciting to me now when I'm shooting skating or like, you know, clothing stuff is like I'm looking at it and I know or I have a sense of where the kids' influences have come from, like what they're looking at, whether it's the way the pant like hits the shoe or if they want to take it into like a gaudy zone and like wear the shirt really small, like whatever it is, I'm kind of like, okay, I know what that is and let's do it because, you know, somehow that influence like hit you at some point. And that's fun for me because I'm always looking at like kind of the minutia of this stuff. And these are some of my skate photos. I just put these in. This is T-Funk at Baker Boys. I put this in because I shot this photo and then I was really excited and I was like, oh, maybe, and I opened the back of the camera and closed it really quick and then I got that light leak on it from the tube lights and I was like, oh, that's why I shoot film. Like you can't really get there digitally. Maybe you can with AI, I don't know, but that was cool. And then I also love skate photography because this is Michaela and it's like, she's someone that came from Colorado and I actually encouraged her to move to New York. She's not like well known or anything, but I like that they can just sit together or she could have been at the same sesh or whatever it is. Like that part to me of skateboarding is cool. These are more two fellas named Max doing hippie jumps. I just put them together, but this one is more like I just love, this happened spontaneously. I was like, dude, let me get a photo, you know. And this one is more planned because this one I was doing the filming thing with it.
Can you talk to the filming thing a little bit? As like, and it seems like it comes out of like the skate photography as well.
Oh yeah, so the filming, at some point I was like, you know, where can skateboard photos live? They don't really hit perfectly online or on Instagram or sometimes as you would hope. And print is awesome, but it's not always a possibility. So I was like, I'm gonna film myself taking these just because I wanted it to feel like a raw kind of voyeur, almost like a YouTube channel kind of thing. So all these I shot while filming myself shooting them. So sometimes I'll set the camera on the ground. Sometimes I'm holding it like this. And
do you want to get out on the floor and show off some of the postures you've had to do to create those images?
Like, it also captures that part of it where like skateboard photos, sometimes you want to get low. And I had shot neck face tagging like that, where I'm just filming him tagging and shooting at the same time and the photos are popping up. And this other guy that writes M1. And we walked around New York and we were doing that and I was like, oh, this could be cool. This could be a fun way to shoot skating. And then it kind of pushed me in a whole direction of shooting skating that way. And that's what that first video was that we put up. That was in Japan like 3 weeks ago. And I'm just filming. It's Japanese, Super Rat, and T4. And they took us to that spot. And those spots. And for me, it was like, okay, this makes sense to me. This is relevant. This is like a fun way to look at photography where it's like you're seeing it happening.
What draws you to shooting skate photos these days? And what for you makes a good skate photo?
For me, a good skate photo, captures that kind of blast mode of what's happening. I looked at a lot of photos of like Tobin Yelland, and I became friends with him, and he was a big inspiration. I love the high-tech photos when it became like set up all the lights and get a Hasselblad, like all that, but I wasn't gonna do that, so I don't know, I just felt conflicted about it. It took me a long time to kind of get into it, and then, you know, I'm lucky because I have been able to shoot with like really good people that people want to watch skate, so that part's not lost on me, and that's part of it. And then the last thing is really like, or the main thing is really like the mission itself, like going out on a bike with the crew, don't know what's going to happen, might get nothing, it might be amazing, and just that chaos that's happening, especially in New York. It's a fun place to like go try to get a skate photo. There's so many variables, so yeah, it's just, and it's fun to like mix those photos in with what I've done previously. A few more. This is a Kobe in New York, Chris Athens, Sam Fran. This was like part of a GX like lookbook. And then, you know, my skate photos don't have to be like something terrifying. I like it when it's like a little bit, like they're just having fun. These are also shot while I was filming. So there's like a whole video where I'm like, it's called Both, and I'm doing both. I'm filming and I'm shooting, and these are both in there. This is Tompkins hacky sack moment I just put in just to keep up appearances. I love hacky sack. I love that these guys like it. This is a happy thing where we shot a photo with Hugo, and he used it for his moniker. So sometimes these guys don't even like restory the stuff. So anything you get, you're kind of like, I'll take it, you know? And then this is kind of going back, but this is like the ongoing thing where I'm like trying to make books. And I did books of like half-built houses. This is like street photos of people. This is paintings. So I've been lucky to like be able to archive a lot of work this way. Me fanning out with Marby Princess, yes, 2 days ago. 2 days ago. So we had seen Marby on Instagram for a long time and had to get a photo. I don't know why these are here. I already went over this part. Oh, this is kind of like Russell Winfield, Virgil Abloh. He's the first black pro snowboarder. This is kind of just like take the picture kind of thing. It's like get it, could be a precious moment, just shoot it. And I just found this photo just scrolling through my stuff, put it in. Clothing work, this is like what I was saying earlier about things have to be unique. Collages. I'm on the way out. I'm almost done. My studio in Colorado, it's our backyard, converted garage, the inside. And again, this is like freed up from being in New York where this would have cost a lot to rent that. Artwork. I put this in because I wanted to end with this because this is like a photo. These are like photos I took for a friend's brand, and it's like work because I didn't want it to feel like if a wealthy person tells you not to worry about money or something. I wanted to be like, it's work. Like I go, like when we're shooting these photos, it's like 25 looks in one day, and it's like, it actually is a busy thing to get done. I enjoy the pressure of having to produce commercial images in like a short amount of time, but I do like work stuff with photography. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Do we have time for questions? Is there a mic we can run around? Someone's gonna. Thanks, Mo.
It's going to tire me out so I can't skate. Damn it.
All right. I really appreciated that. Thank you for sharing that. And I kind of really thought a lot about one thing you said about photography being in frames. And then like the next thing was the OSB with the photo on it. And I kind of thought, was that deliberately so you don't have to frame it? Or was it more or less like you wanted to work big? Or I also don't understand the process, how you got a photo on wood.
Right. Let's see that. So these were. It's called window perf. And it's dotted decals, so light can pass through a window. So it's basically window stickers. So this was like a really lucky thing because, like on this, it's the part of the image that's dark falls away and becomes more transparent. So all this is just like no information around the fire. And then you're seeing through that part and you're seeing the OSB and the stamp from the mill. And then the really lucky thing is there's holes, so when I glue it down, there's no bubbles. Like if you try to stick a sticker on anything that big, it's hard. And then, so in person, they just feel like these like image fused onto the wood, and the wood is kind of like creating a different layer of depth. And that's something I figured out after just having that stuff around for maybe even a couple years. And I was like, oh, just stick the photo on the wood. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was imagining like a squeegee or something like that, but it's more like glue and then roll it on.
No, it's a squeegee.
Okay.
It's a rolled sticker, and it's perforated, and there's like different degrees of perforation, and that's how we did it.
Thank you very much, Sam. Thank you very much, Peter. Actually, Peter, I just realized that you were, I think, not the last issue of Skate John, but maybe it was like an issue before that I keep in my bathroom. So again, it's like a lot of light bulbs going off. But I especially love the Max Palmer film. Did you ever get a picture of Gons kickflipping a bike or trying to kickflip a bike? Is my first question. And then the second question is, you obviously documented a lot of subcultures and scenes that can't really exist for a number of economic or social or technological reasons. How does it feel knowing that skateboarding continues to evolve and become more and more accepted by the mainstream, whereas graffiti is never going to be in the Olympics, but breakdancing it was?
Right. Thank you. I love that. Yeah, I love that you have that magazine. I think for me, skateboarding's at an interesting place because it's just broken down now to who do you want to watch, in a way, like who's expressing themselves on the board, or whether it's athletically or stylistically, and that's like after an evolution of like so many years. Like in the 80s and 90s, it was like who can do this trick, who can do this trick, and then now it's like people don't even look at it that way necessarily. Graffiti for me is, I know it's inherently sort of bad, people don't like it, but for me it's the only thing that challenges like what is public space, and that's not my concept. That's like a concept this artist Ron English wrote about it, but I read it and I was like, this is it. Because if you think about it, and you go outside and you look at a billboard and it says like Schick deodorant or what, Pringles, whatever it is, you're like, why do I have to look at that, It's public space. I shouldn't be subjected to that. So that's, to me, what graffiti is like, well, if you're gonna look at that, then you're also gonna look at this. And that's like the interesting part of graffiti for me. That's like, other than the actual style of the painting itself. So, and then the second part of that is I don't think graffiti in the sense that we think about like throw-ups and like New York graffiti. I don't think it would necessarily want to be in the Olympics. I think maybe like the piecer type people that like do the really technical stuff, that could hit in the Olympics, I think. I don't know if it's super physical too. I don't know if people would look at it as a sport, but that would be cool.
Hi, that was really nice. I also am a New Yorker, have been my whole life since 21. But no, I had a question. I have two questions. One of them is kind of disrespectful, and so you can choose to skip it, and then the other one's kind of normal. The first one is, you deal with a lot of like fringe communities, graffiti writers, skaters, even snowboarders, fucking weirdos, and do you feel like it helps looking kind of weird, like having a big old beard, kind of looking like Will Odom? That's like, it's kind of disarming in a way, where if you show up to these places where they're graffiti writers and look like a square, like it's kind of like, who the fuck is this cop? Yeah, like I never let Sam come out with me. And then that's the first question. You don't have to answer that one. The second one is,
I like that one.
do you... when you go, like, I assume you're not friends with Max Palmer, because he and I are boys. You go to these places where they're the best skateboarders. Everybody wants to see them. Max Palmer, Cyrus Bennett, Hugo Bosserup, they're the best of the best right now. They're the most exciting show on the planet. And part of that is that they intimidate a lot of skate photographers and other people, and they already have a history of working with other people in the city, like whether that's Jared or Ben Colin or somebody. And do you feel like a little bit like that you're going into a territory that's maybe not yours? Like, they're kind of like Colin's guys in a little way. I don't think Ben would say that, you know what I mean? But like, as a skate photographer, you kind of go like, or I'm not gonna go hit up like bronze dudes because those are Heikala's guys. You know what I mean? Like, there's kind of like they have a working practice of shooting skate photos with the people they've built a sort of working relationship with. And do you feel like you're like intruding in some way, or like, are you like, nah, I'm the fuck shit, dude. Like, I can. Yeah.
No, it's a good question. I get that within all these subcultures, it's like it would be easy to step on toes. In this case, like Ben Colin, he's been super supportive. And I think what it is like earlier, also Matt Pricey Hot, he's been super, like, he'll be like, this is sick. So that makes me feel good. But I feel like, especially like with the guys I'm shooting, like you mentioned, I think they know that they're not gonna, those photos that I do are not gonna end up in the same place. So it's almost like, when I mentioned Ari earlier, Ari Makopoulos, like he's kind of someone that's like a little older, but I look at his career as maybe like a roadmap where I'm like, oh, look how he's doing it. He's probably almost 70, but his photos get mixed in with the other stuff in a way that a lot of skate photography might not. So that's why I feel like they're open to it. And that's why it's been working so far. And the other thing is, it's funny, like it's the same, that graffiti book and the skate photos. Like once I'm like, okay, I've shot with these folks, the other people are way more receptive after that. That's more how I think about it, like the context. And it's not like, for me, I'm not trying to really flex. It's like, if you're in New York, like those are the people that are around and you have mutual friends with them. And I feel like the skaters there are more approachable because they're with other people that are doing exceptional things in other industries. So they're not just like these gods or something. They're more like in the mix. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, Max has a studio practice and makes sculpture and like and it's right next to the Skate John offices, and everyone there is a skater and an artist and exists in a lot of different worlds and has a lot of different aspirations of like where they want to be. And so I feel like for a lot of those guys too, they're like, okay, cool, like I've gotten my skate kudos, like, but it'd be dope if I got a photo in Aperture or some other in some other context, you know.
Yeah, it's the same. Also with what Plank is, I feel like it's going more in that direction where it's like, it's another lane from Thrasher.
You tell.
Maybe one more question?
Thanks, y'all. That was fun. Thanks for listening.
I love that this thing has a funny bone sticker on it. Did anyone notice that? Thank you again, Peter and Sam. Big round of applause.